what are you complaining about? I put a bus route in your village, didn't I? So problem solved. You go, yeah.
Yeah.
That is one small component actually of the real malaise and anxiety that people are feeling. They're starting to feel like, again, depending on where you go, obviously it varies. With there's many different parts of the country that have different experiences, but I can tell you there are people who are living in certain communities where they're starting to feel like an alien in their own homeland, and those people's concerns are not even being talked about, let alone addressed.
Well, yeah, I mean, it gets to the basic point that all honest people would acknowledge, which is that the pursuit, it's what people acknowledge it on an individual level. That sort of the pursuit of wealth isn't a good goal. But for some reason, we have a sort of curious blind spot in Ireland when it comes to acknowledging that as the sort of societal goal, because it certainly seems to be a lot of the concern of the political class. That, yeah, the GDP is great on paper and all of this. I mean, there's obviously the conversation to be had about that sort of, that figure in Ireland is somewhat inflated by a number of factors. And that a lot of people don't see the effects of that on the ground. But it's just it's very much the case at a societal level. It's like I'm not denying here, because people sometimes get annoyed that you're not sort of like wishing power. You're not part of the, as I've seen a phrase, "make Ireland poor again" movement or anything like this. But there is a sense in which there was much more cohesion when we were centered on something other than foreign direct investment and yeah, seeing our GDP, serving our GDP essentially. I certainly think that building sustainable wealth for the betterment of society is a good thing, but it's not everything, which is kind of a lot of the issue these days. I think a lot of things like societal, as we've seen, societal cohesion have been neglected. You and I would definitely say one of the foremost neglects, if not the foremost, is sort of spiritual upkeep of the nation. And I would say that's where all of the problems stem from, really, to be honest. But yeah, it's making sort of, yeah, the pursuit of wealth the central goal of your nation, which I think ours is in many ways, whether we want to acknowledge that or not, is going to have a lot of ill effects, and it is like it's happening now.
What do you make of what Martin said as well? Because of course he was speaking on the at the commemoration of the 1916 Easter Rising, and one of the things he said was that the Rising was all about internationalism and inclusion, or words to that effect. So he said that the protest is totally at odds with what those men were trying to do, and at
I
Easter
think if
we.
he'd said that to them back then, they would have said, "What the hell are you talking about?" We have this other problem in Ireland with just like projecting our own modern biases back into the past. These words were marginal, I would imagine, in political discourse back then. People had very concrete ideas of what they wanted the nation to be and of the sort of society that they wanted to create. And it wasn't this sort of, wishy-washy, island for everyone kind of thing. It was a very concrete, cohesive vision. And I think that, I mean, again, the one that I always go back to because it was so formative for me was 2018 with the abortion referendum and things, because a lot of people were saying around that time, I think rightly, that oh, if the leaders of the 1916 rising could see the country now, they'd be spinning in their graves. And I think that's correct, by and large. Whereas others were obviously offering the counter opinion that no, this is very much in keeping with their vision. And it's like, on what basis are you making that claim? It's like abortion, okay, it's normal now, unfortunately, but then it was rightly considered an aberration, and like the idea that they would have thought the same as you do in 2018 is a joke. So I think it's the same principle here, that it's just like, nearly rewriting the past to suit present needs, and it's a very insidious thing that politicians do, but it's very widespread in Ireland.
Yeah, I mean, like, just to take an example, I have a lot of respect for James Connolly. He was an Irish hero. God bless that man. I would put him up there in our without being too idolatrous, if you want to use a turn of phrase, our national pantheon of heroes. But yeah, I mean, he was obviously a socialist. I would never try to claim, and I'm not a socialist, and I think socialism is a disaster, but I would never try to claim he wasn't a socialist or say, no, actually, yeah, he agreed with me on economic issues. Like he didn't, and I'm under no illusions about that. So if you being Micheál Martin want to have kind of a globalization, this is what I'm about, your pan-Europeanism or whatever the hell he would describe his philosophy as. If you want to believe that, you can believe it, but you can't pretend that these men, I mean there's no more internationalist institution than the British Empire. It literally spanned the globe, and it was the very thing that they were fighting against so that they could have exclusive ownership over a little island on the edge of the Atlantic Ocean called Ireland. So it kind of seems like it would have been diametrically opposed to their values. I can't interview them, but I think it's fair to intuit that from looking at their life's work and what they actually achieved.
No, I mean it's a political strategy. I mean the politicians, Micheál Martin in this instance, rightly intuits the sort of patriotic streak or the desire to be patriotic in a lot of the people that were marching. And therefore, they go to, as you say, sort of the core members of the pantheon of Ireland's national mythology and sort of attempt to co-opt them. In the name of our modern art, the project of modern Ireland, say, but anyone with any sort of sense of history or accuracy senses it for what it is. So, no, it was fairly, they were fairly cynical statements, I must say. But I don't think they're certainly not going to have won over anyone who disagreed with them. So anyone that was at the march and then came home and was thrown into despair because they realized Mr. Martin was right and they hadn't been contributing to the inclusive vision of the founders. Like I don't. It's all political gaming, suffice to say. But you might, if you were a cynic, describe that as an example of disinformation. Because although I would say in Micheál Martin's case, it's probably misinformation. He probably does think that the founder sort of shared his worldview or whatever. But a cynic might say that it was an act of disinformation, and this is precisely why it's so dangerous to put disinformation control into the hands of the government or any sort of state adjacent bodies